Pirates of the Caribbean, one of my personal favorites, if I do say so myself. So welcome to the channel. This is Mr. A Awake channel, Mr. Anderson, which is my last name, and Awake obviously because this is going to be a channel about those who are awake and for those who are awake, who are no longer in their slumber of deception and programming. Now, if you are a newbie to this, maybe this channel is not going to be for you. This is going to be probably mostly for existing people in this community that are aware to the lies and deception of this world. And that includes our history, science, the medical field. That doesn't mean everything's a lie, but a lot of it is a lie and has been. We've been deceived in so many ways. We're going to talk about just deconstructing how much it takes to deconstruct your mind from what you've already been, again, programmed to believe, and why you believe those things, where those ideas came from. We're going to talk about biblical cosmology, of course. Everything's going to be founded and rooted in the Bible for our foundation of beliefs to support most of this. But obviously, there's going to be a lot of speculation. We don't have it all figured out. We don't have all the answers. We have some of the answers, and we keep digging. And I guess part of the reason for creating this channel is because we need more voices. We need more people that talk about this type of content, this type of information, because they're getting less and less. Like, I'm tired. I'm sick and tired of nobody or having few people in this space that are talking about, that have the discernment and humility to talk about the truth and what's going on. Whether it's Charlie Kirk and Eric, like, if you don't have and you're gonna hear that word a lot, and a lot of people are starting to throw that. Even Eric Kirk's throwing the word around, discernment. It's because it is true. Like, there is a certain level of spiritual discernment you have when you're recognizing evil, when you're recognizing malicious intent, call it. And those of us that have been in this space, we're good at recognizing. We've become way better at recognizing that. And I'm realizing there's a glare off my glasses, so I'm going to take my glasses off. We've been deceived. Even those that are in this space, like, we've had people we've trusted, like I trusted Dan Bongino and Cash Patel and Graham Allen and the Brandon Tatums of the world. Those type of people that we've trusted for our information because they were an outlier. They're another source that, like, well, wow, that what they're saying seems true, and it seems that their convictions and their beliefs for why they're saying it is true and it's believable. But after seeing, obviously, the country they support blindly, a lot of people just blindly support it. These baseless claims. It's like, no, they're not baseless. If you knew anything about who funds us, who runs our country, who's in charge of our funds, who's in charge of our political atmosphere, it's the most obvious thing in the world, but you don't look. And so for those people that automatically support without questioning, without critically asking critical questions, and without answering them honestly and objectively, they're hard to trust. And so there's very few that are in this space anymore that, I'm hoping Candace, and Tucker Carlson, we talk about them being controlled opposition, same with like Sean Ryan. And I do believe that. Like, I believe Joe Rogan's controlled opposition. Like, they give you an illusion of choice. They give you an illusion of an alternative opinion or thought that makes us as consumers, because that's what we are. We are consumers. We live in a consumer-based society. Even when it comes to information, we are consumers, right? And so what does the consumer want? The consumer wants we understand and we can see that the left wing and the right wing are two wings of the same bird. And so we need an alternative opinion. And so here's Joe Rogan, or here's this guy. And it gives you that illusion of, like, a third option. Here's another option. Here's another choice. And they don't really... They have great podcasts. Like, obviously, Rogan has some great podcasts. And other people that are in that space have good podcasts. But when it comes to actual critical questions of getting to the truth, they beat around the bush. They're shy about it. And so I think Candace Owens, I'm praying and hoping that she is, which is terrible, that we're a predominantly white male Christian country, and we have a black woman who I trust more than I think any other person right now in the country, as far as in a public, who's in the public eye, who's in the public space, right? Candace is obviously in the public space, and she's one of the few that right now I currently cautiously trust, because she's flipping over tables, and you can see the slander. Like, if you know anything about how these people operate, the biggest thing is to make you look stupid, to make you lose credibility. So they're gonna find ways to slander you, slander your name, slander your brand, slander your thoughts and logic and reasoning, whatever it may be. They're gonna try to make you look dumb, right? And then they're gonna have other people, that are just like they have right-wing people now slandering Candace and Trump slandering. That's all intentional to make like oh, she's crazy, she's off the edge. And then you go to the comments. You go I'm huge on TikTok, and you're gonna see a lot of TikTok uploads into my streams probably, because not that that's my main source of information, but one, it's comical. Two, it is a source of information. Quit watching Fox News and CNN. Go to independent journalism, you could call it. And again, just more thoughts, more things for you to kind of process and formulate an opinion or a conviction or belief, whatever it may be. So you're consuming that, right? You're trying to give yourself enough information to make maybe a definitive statement, if that, right? So with Candace, I tread cautiously but she is targeting certain groups that are responsible for a lot of bad things that we'll get into, obviously, at a later date in these podcasts. So, but she is another voice. So this is just me being another voice, being another person that's gives you a feeling of community, right? Because that's what at the end of the day, it's what we're seeking. You go to church, you have friends, you have family, you have these things that give you community. But when you're awake and you've been awake for a while and people are still in their slumber, it becomes increasingly difficult to, one, participate, to play along in the shenanigans that is this life, as far as the veil is lifted and you see more clearly now than you ever have. And just like Solomon says, with great wisdom comes, much sorrow. And it's so true. And that's not saying that, we're all mighty and wise up here and we can't be wrong. It's like, no, but we've seen how deep and dark the levels of deception go. And most people do not want to go that deep. They don't even want to think. They don't even want to think about it, let alone understand it, process it, and see it happening daily. The programming before your eyes, whether it's just through ads, through your television. Obviously, television. We're talking about words and semantics and etymology of all these different words and what they mean. So you're going to be able to process this differently. When somebody talks about, hey, did you hear what happened last night in the news or yesterday in the news? You're going to be able to process that at a much higher rate of speed, which is usually just blocking it out because it's part of the game. Like, this is a stage. All of this is a stage. The politics space is a stage. And probably like Kubrick directed back in, Eyes Wide Shut, and he was, conveniently murdered before the extended release was released, or the extended cut was released. This is all one big show. That's why Hollywood is Hollywood, and they direct and they produce and they have actors and they have characters. And I do believe 100% that's obviously what we're dealing with a lot of this. Are there a few maybe possible, true, genuine people that's not part of the game? Possibly. Can't say, I don't know for sure, but possibly. But usually they leave or they get out or they get Charlie Kirked. And so, again, but for the most part, yeah, it's a game. It's a production. And this is coming from a 3-time Trump supporter, or Trump voter, I should say. Yeah, he's part of the game. He's part of the shenanigans for sure. So I don't play the politics game anymore. I used to be big, and this is part of the awakening that, you deconstruct your beliefs, your convictions. You have to sit with yourself and say, you know what, if I'm being honest, this guy's a scumbag. And this guy is corrupted. And we can talk obviously for hours on end about why. Obviously, the biggest awakening for me for that was Charlie Kirk's situation and how he handled that, and how the whole production of Eric or Kirk taking over Turning Point has been just that, a production, a show. And so, again, this channel is going to focus a lot on current events, on things that, obviously are going on currently. We're going to, we're going to intertwine some TikToks into that. We're going to have some comical stuff, things I just find funny, to kind of give us a little break, a little breather. But we're also going to talk about how it affects us spiritually, because at the end of the day, if you're not for truth, what are you for? What is your purpose? The purpose is to seek truth. That doesn't mean that I will never present myself as an oh holier than thou person. I'm not. I'm fallible like any other person. I've got sin in my life. I've got temptation in my life. I'm wicked in some ways. Things that I'm not proud of. And so I'm never going to shame you for those types of things, because I understand that mankind is fallible. But at the end of the day, pursuing truth, pursuing Jesus Christ is obviously the highest level of what we should be attaining for, and flipping over whatever table may need flipped to uncover that. And so you become passionate. I become if I ever come across as I'm going to make fun of things for sure. Like, I'm going to be like, when you're in this space, you've been made fun of so much, as far as, believing that the earth is flat, biblical cosmology type things, our history is a lie, and the architecture of buildings and how that's a lie and how it's you get so used to becoming made fun of, because again, that's groupthink mentality, right? It's cooler to fit in. It's cooler to be a part of the crowd, to be part of the group that's like all in agreement, right? Or what we understand as a fundamental belief in our society. And so it's easier to be part of that crowd and just go along with it. What's way more difficult, number one, is to challenge that, but also challenge it in a way that is intellectually honest, but do it with conviction, but also do it with I find I've tried different approaches. You've tried the comical approach. You've tried kind of like, hey, have you guys ever thought about this? Have you guys ever thought about, that water always needs a container? You've tried the soft route, you've tried the comical route, you've tried the let me just, plant a couple ideas. And you realize you get nothing but kickback and flack and get made fun of. It's not cool. It's not like we get some type of weird cloud or reward for this. It's, no, you're deemed. And what's funny is, as you progress in your awakening, you become so much more confident, and you become so much not caring of what other people say or think. You're at a point where it actually, you feel bad in a way for people that are still in their slumber. And that's what we're trying to pull you from your slumber and pull you out of that. And you may not want to. And we recognize that too. You recognize people that are interested, you could say, and you recognize people that are just, you're like, there's no point, at least not yet. Not that we ever give up hope, but you become much more conscientious about who you share it with and who you talk to about it, and who's going to be more receptive to it. Yeah, life would be so much easier just to go with the flow, right? Not question things, not just be part of the crowd again, right? Just like high school, just like school. You're just part of the group. No. What's way cooler is pursuing truth. And it does come at a cost. It deconstructs your reality. It deconstructs your reality. And it might deconstruct your religion. I'm still, most certainly, people's like, oh, if you're questioning that, what about questioning God? It's like, no, it actually affirms that. It substantiates God's creation and the biblical, and the biblical foundation for it, as far as it's in the scriptures. But also, you just realize, I'm gonna have to cut that out because I lost AC furnace kicked on, and so, but it affirms and substantiates your faith in God and your belief in God. But does it make you question maybe your, if you're a Presbyterian or Baptist or Catholic? Yeah, you start to, because you start to realize you didn't ask those same questions even pertaining to your already preconceived beliefs, right? You realize how much that programming is in you too, how much your programming of those preconceptions are rooted deep in your mind. And just like, I think it's Mark Twain, people quote him all the time, you see, where it's easier to fool somebody than convince them they've been fooled. And if that's a right quote, I think it is, it's so true. It is so much easier to stand in a pulpit and pronounce things for years upon years upon years, and just plant the idea and just completely and reiterate it over and over and over again until you hear an alternative opinion or thought. And we'll get into that later about what kind of deconstructed my thought process on that. Besides just all these other conspiracies that became truths. They're not conspiracies, they're truths. So yeah, it's a journey. It's quite a journey. And you're wanting as much as it feels isolating in the way that you're wired now and the way that you think, you're still wanting community. That's why we go to TikTok, that's why we go to YouTube. And we find people that are also thinking like us, because we're like, I know I'm not alone. We know we're not alone in this, right? Excuse me. We know we're not alone in this, and we know that there are other people that think like I think and are wired like I'm wired, and are also aware of this evil in this world and this deception of this world, and know that this is just a game that they're playing right out in front of us. And so you're looking for those, right? And that's what we're trying to reach out to and communicate with, and why somebody like me, who's just a small town warehouse guy, I do mess with some properties and stuff, but I'm nothing of significance. You look for just another community outreach, and this is just part of that. This is just another person who's, guess what? You're not alone. You're not alone at all. And so, and we're all just trying to do our jobs, our calling, this Holy Spirit calling of waking people up. Okay? And you learn you learn a lot during the way. You learn a lot along this journey of about yourself. You rediscover parts of yourself. You rediscover, your convictions, your passions, your purpose, and you're much more in tune with yourself than you ever have been before. And it's a confidence. You start to carry, what's funny, I said, this shame feeling of being this weird conspiracy guy. You become so much more confident in that now. You own it, not because again it's somehow catchy or cool or a new fad. It's like, no, this is just, I'm confident in this truth. And it also makes you much more careful and cautious on things that you speak about. You become so much more just prepared on how you process and formulate, again, an actual serious conviction or belief. Like you understand that I've been wrong in the past, because you do have this ego death. People talk about it a lot, and it is true. You do have they call it an ego death, and it's right, because you have to humble yourself to a point of looking at yourself and saying, I've been wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong on so many things. And you have to sit with that. And you have to be able to now formulate a new, if you've now processed a new thought or conviction, like the earth is flat, and you have to substantiate that now. If that's your new belief, you might sit there, you might have things like, I don't know, I know it's not a ball, or I know it's It's not a ball, but I don't know if it's flat. You don't have to form a 110% conviction, but there are a few things that you start to now have a new belief in, and you got to be able to defend it and own that, right? So, but you also realize you've been wrong so many times. So again, forming a new set of beliefs, it takes a lot more information and a lot more time to now, I guess, pronounce something, or to now support something like Satan's little season. Like I'm big into following the people that's been the pioneers of that theory, and I don't even want to call it a theory because I do believe that's where we're at. Again, I can now say that in confidence. I couldn't for a while. I couldn't, I was intrigued by it. And then obviously being, swimming in those circles in that space of people who talk about it, I kept absorbing more information. And I'm like, you know what? I'm a betting guy. It's part of my sin. FanDuel. I don't bet a lot, but if I was to make a wager, which come at me or whatever, if I was to make a wager, I can't say I'm not 100% sure. I'm about 90% sure we're in Satan's little season, and that came after exuberant amounts of information. It wasn't just like I watched a 5-minute clip and I'm like, yep, that's it. We're in the season. It's like, no. I know now not to be quickly turned to every form. Well, there's a verse in the New Testament about don't be quickly turned to another gospel, right? And so, and you're not but you're waiting for but you also interpret things so much differently now because you're no longer operating from a point of your preconceived beliefs. Like when you've been in this space, you've set those aside. You've learned to look at things so objectively, and not put your subjectiveness into any of it, really, because that's what you have to do. And that's why it's funny to us. Like when people say, like when I say, "Hey, do you feel like you're moving right now?" No. If you was to be an objective person right now, and use place right here in the world without any prior teaching, do you feel like you're moving? And they can't even sometimes answer that. I'm like, look at yourself right. Look outside right now. Besides watching the sun and the moon move, which is what they do you feel yourself moving? And you'll see this well, I guess I don't. Okay, well then follow that. Listen to that. Okay? Trust that. Trust your senses that God gave you. And that's when I realize people can't even be objective sometimes. They're so deeply programmed. Well, I mean, that's what they tell us. That's what we've been taught. It's like, yeah, but think for yourself for a minute. Think for yourself for a second. And that's part of the problem. We've always trusted authorities. We have been ingrained from the time we've been kids to trust our parents, trust our teachers, trust our coaches, trust our professors, trust the manager, trust the upper management, trust your doctors, trust your history teachers, trust you. That's been ingrained. You've always been taught to trust people. And I'm not saying that every single one of the people was wrong, and obviously most of them had no malicious intent. They were just regurgitating information they've been taught. But that's what it is. It's regurgitation, right? It is just repeating information that they've been given. That's not using logic and intellect. That's just memorization. And so it's not their fault, right? This is where the grace part comes in. You give people so much more grace because you have to, because you needed it. Because there's times where I'm like, all right, yeah, I think 9/11, Tower 7, that's suspicious, right? You started out this journey not just thinking, not at the point where you're at now. It was baby steps, right? You were babes in the word, like you still need the milk and not the meat of conspiracy truth, right? You was in the milk of it. And people are still very much on the nipple, bottle, milk of conspiracies, right? And it's like, and you have to be aware of that. So it's like, okay, well, how do I get to them? So, or not even get to them like that, but I mean, how do I break through their mind? Because that's what it's difficult and it's challenging. But you also got to think about what did it take for you, right? But anyways, going back to the authorities, we are taught to trust that. It's been ingrained in us for so long. And I think a lot of people are starting to wake up now to where you can kind of, I guess, the angle you can kind of approach people with and they listen to more is the food aspect, the poisoning of the food, the poisoning of our bodies. People can see the rise in autoimmune disorders and cancers and at a younger age and all the heart problems after a certain shot we got a few years ago. Like that's tangible evidence that people can get on board with, and then you download apps like Yucca and different things that like tell you, hey, this disrupts the genome. It's the gene mutation ingredient, right? It's right in front of your face. Or this has hormonal disruption, or this leads to certain cancers, or whatever it may be. That's kind of like, okay, that's alarming. And so people start to see that. And then you can kind of tie that to the medicinal field where they just treat issues for the rest of your life. It's just a drug. And here's another drug to offset that drug, and here's a drug to offset that. Now, I'm not saying like if I have a broken arm, I'm not going to go to the doctor, or if I have heart problems, I'm going to go get it checked out. That's not to say everybody's evil and on this big giant scam to, make your life a living hell. It's the fact that they're also mostly repeating information. They've been taught how to treat this. Okay, you have a rise in this blood count. Okay, we're going to run a few tests. More than likely, we're going to put you on this drug. Okay, not why is that? And let's unpack that. What's your diet like? Is there something that you're inputting? You are what you eat. What are you inputting that's causing this output? Okay, so that's kind of the introductory level of angle you can go at with people to approach. But it's still people at the end of the day, if a doctor in a white coat's telling them something versus there's, a guy at work or, a family member or whatever, trust their doctor. And that's okay. I'm not, that's the thing. I'm like, here's just what we do is here's information. Here's an alternative source of information. Do with this as you may. I'm not anybody special. People in this, but people like Barbara O'Neill and different people that are actually doctors, holistic doctors, whatever. Here's their thoughts on it. Okay. And it makes sense. It's not just because, I want to do this because it's holistic, but it logically makes sense. And so again, you follow that logic, that line of reasoning. You're like, okay, well, maybe I should cut back on this and implement more of this or whatever it may be. And let me track the results. So, again, we're just providing information, an alternative source of information. And what's sad is, as we know in this space, again, the suppression of information is the biggest red flag. Excuse me. I'm going to say that again. The suppression of information should send off so many alarms and bells in your stinking head of why are they suppressing this? Why is this suppressed? Why can't I find this? Why is this doctor? Why are they suppressing this video or his information? Or why are they suppressing when you go on YouTube and you're not going to find the information that us truthers have found by going to Google and YouTube and typing it in, because you're going to get first of all, you're going to get a little commentary that says this is an archaic idea. This is not founded in any type of, current text or science discovery or whatever. They're already planting the seeds of doubt and programming in whenever you type these things in. So you're not going to find these things just off willy-nilly, right? And it takes some extra digging because they've suppressed it. And anything that's and our thought process is like, okay, if it's such a stupid, archaic, or dumb idea or dumb thing to follow or support, why can't we have just the freedom of choosing or freedom of information just to have that and just to have that alternative source? So it's because they want you to think one way, right? They are programming you. It's here is how we want you to think and why we want you to think this way and why you shouldn't, why it's dangerous to think this way. It's like, okay, well then let me at least have the option to think that way, or have that thought, or have that information to process again, consume between my two ears about this other possibility. But when you eliminate that and only give you this set of information to go off of, guess what? That's programming you to think this is the only way, this is the right way. So anything that's suppressed, boom, bell's going off. All right? It should. And then you should think, okay, and also the opposite of that. If something is thrown in your face, if something is easy to access, if something is all over the news, right? If something is right in your face about, oh, did you hear about this? You hear about this? It's all across Facebook, social media. There's a reason for it. That's intentional. This is part of the discernment level. Again, we're going to be talking about a lot, is when it's thrown in your face, it's thrown in your face for a reason. Why everybody saw Charlie Kirk. Why that wasn't scrubbed immediately, but everybody saw it. That's intentional. So you have to understand that as well. So you process that again differently than most people, because you're already thinking, well, there's a reason behind it. I don't know the reason yet. It hasn't come out yet. But I know that they're wanting us to see that for something. Okay? So this is just a very basic introduction to this channel. I know I've already gotten kind of long-winded here for an intro video, but we're going to explore that. You can come along with me. We're going to ask some questions. We're also I like movies. I like TV shows, and I might kind of see how they link between, do reviews where they kind of link between the spiritual side of what they're trying, the messages they're trying to send through this show or through this movie, or it might just be a review of, like, I like good acting and good scenes, and I enjoy some of that content. A lot of people in the space will say, well, you need to completely just, listen to no music, watch because that's all. But when you're aware of what they're trying to do and you're seeing the messages they're trying to present, again, I believe it's safe to consume some of that and detach from the messages they're trying to present. I'm not saying entirely, but yes. Do I still watch? Is there some things you shouldn't watch? Absolutely. Some things you shouldn't listen to? Absolutely. But anyways, we're probably going to do some reviews. I'm in the process of just bought some land, so I might do some kind of follow along vlog type as far as what I'm going to be doing. That's going to be down the road though. That's 6 months to a year out, Lord willing, as far as that process goes. But so there's going to be some different content. We'll make playlists for different things. But yeah, welcome to the channel. Hope you enjoy, follow along, and we'll see you next time.